Hello again. It's the last sunny day of September, and I've come for a walk about half an hour's drive from Athona to Thorncombe Wood and the adjoining Puddletown Forest. First of all, need to set off through these woods towards the cottage where Thomas Hardy was born and grew up and wrote his first novels. Beautiful broadleaved woodland on the way round to Hardy's cottage. Very few people. I've seen as many squirrels as I have people so far on this walk, and just standing on the edge of the deep dip here, almost like a bomb crater, but this is what's known in these parts as a swallow hole. Places where suddenly the ground drops away, and my understanding is this is because the limestone strata beneath have been undermined by water, and then at some stage they collapse and the land falls down above them, rather like sinkholes that occasionally open up in roads and motorways. Beautiful beech trees here, and still leaves from last year's autumn on the ground. Let's go on towards the cottage. Here's a rather sweet view of Thomas Hardy's cottage. He was born here, he lived here, and he wrote Under the Greenwood Tree and Far from the Madding Crowd while he lived in this cottage, and sometimes would walk into Dorchester to work and back to this cottage on the edge of the woods and the heath. And further on the walk I might tell you about something else that happened while he was here as a young man. Well, you join me again beyond Thomas Hardy's cottage, which by the way is in the care of the National Trust. You can go in and have guided tours and so on. If you're a trust member, you pay the fee. And here we are in Puddletown Forest, so called, and on the edge of Black Heath. In Hardy's day, he would have known all of this as Heathland, but then in the 20th century there was extensive commercial forestry. The Forestry Commission came in and planted, I can see larches here, Scots pine, and away to my left the woodland is still in existence, but to my right the heathland is being restored. In recent years large parts of Puddletown Forest have been returned to heath because this is the rarer and more valuable landscape, the habitat. And you'll see that just a few of the native species trees are growing back, quite small, and the gorse and the bracken dominate. And there are some wild ponies left to wander in the forest on the heathland now to help keep the species from taking over any large bushes and so on. Right, onwards along this lovely path to the east. Now I've walked perhaps 10 minutes along this rather lovely bridleway. You may be able to hear the sound of the A35 in the background because it's only 300 or 400 yards to my left through the woods. And here's the path going on ahead eastwards towards a village called Puddletown. And I thought I'd stop here and tell you a story, because in his mid-20s, Hardy, who'd been in London training as an architect and had a rather sad time, came back to lick his wounds, really, back to his home in Dorset. And when he did that, he remade the acquaintance of a young cousin of his in Puddletown called Tryphena Sparks. She was in her teens, so Hardy was much the elder of the two. And, well, we don't really fully know We know there was some kind of affection between them. We think that there may have been talk of marriage, but it never came to anything, allegedly because Tryphina's parents thought Hardy had never really come to anything much in life. But this is the path where they would have met if they walked between Tryphina's home down there and Thomas Hardy's home back in that direction. It'd be lovely to know the truth about that relationship. A friend of Athona, Nick Hilliard, has published a fascinating book based on his own personal research, which suggests that that relationship stuck with Hardy and haunted him through most of his adult life, and that Tryphina and his relationship with her reappears in coded form time after time after time in Hardy's novels. We'll never probably know, but here we are, along the path they would have walked from Hardy's cottage to Puddletown. Much as I wouldn't want all this land covered in conifers, you have to admit there are some monumental trees here. Some of them just go up and up and up and up and up. I don't think you could build a sailing ship large enough to want this as a mast. Majestic trees. On we go. I love this forest for the variety of paths, among other things. Broad gravel tracks created for forestry, like the one I've just come off. Paths like the bridleway we were on before, deep in leaf mould. And then little paths like this one, dipping right down into a wooded valley below. Plenty of wildlife too, of course. I mentioned the squirrels. I've seen deer, but unfortunately by the time I got the camera out they were too far away to record for you. But I'll keep my eyes peeled as we go onward. Careful, it's steep. Over at the eastern side of the forest, a road runs through, and we've just emerged from behind that van. And this road used to be known as Rhododendron Mile, because for getting on for a mile, it was lined either side by rhododendron bushes as high as a house. Where are they now? Well, they're all gone. They've been deliberately cut back because, as you may know, the rhododendron as an introduced species is very invasive, kills everything else underneath it, and penetrates into the forest like nobody's business. So that's why it's been removed. I think Thomas Hardy would be appalled at the way our ecosystems across the whole planet are degrading and have done in our lifetime. Already, many things he was familiar with, creatures, species of flower and plant, are seen no more. But at least in places there is active conservation work going on, and I hope he'd approve of what's been done here to try and let the forest thrive without the rhododendrons filling it. Now I'm turning round and going back into the trees. Isn't that a great view? We're looking roughly south. You can't see the coast, but it's somewhere beyond that far ridge of hills. More of the heathland here in front of us. In Hardy's day, much of southern central Dorset would have been heathland, and he recreated all of that in Egdon Heath in his novel The Return of the Native, in which the heath almost takes, it's as if it were a character in the novel. So powerful a presence is it. Well, I mentioned different types of paths in this great area of open country. You can walk all sorts of different paths. But here's one thoroughfare more, one with a difference, because here just walked along a section of Roman road. Right across the summit of the Black Heath runs the Roman road to Dorchester, and some of it clearer than it's been for many a year after the felling of trees around. In the 1st century AD, 1st century CE, the Roman army was led into the southwest by the man who would later become the Emperor Vespasian. Came to the area that is now Dorchester, vanquished the local tribe, the Durotriges, whose name still lives on in the county name. It's the origin, somewhere in the etymology, of Dorset. But it's wonderful to me that here I can walk the same path exactly that the legions walked back and forth, looking towards the sea as they went, no doubt, and with Dorchester ahead. And that's where I'm going now, back towards Hardy's cottage. Last stop on my walk today, this tranquil spot, also at the top of the area known as Black Heath, Rashi Pond. Beautiful place. Sometimes on a summer's day I've seen snakes swimming in the water here. Lots of dragonflies, other insects. I wonder if there was a pond here when Vespasian needed to stop and water his horses. Or if young Thomas Hardy sat here just letting his imagination fashion maybe a local shepherd into Gabriel Oak, or a young woman he'd met at a dance into Bathsheba Everdeen. Apart from the faint sound of the A35 in the background, this really is far from the madding crowd. And 5 or 10 minutes walk further back is the car park, but I think I will bid you farewell here by Rashi Pond.